This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show, where we celebrate the role players and the underdogs in sports. And our Moonlighter for today is a guy that I have wanted to get on the podcast since we started this podcast almost exactly 6 years ago, because he's truly one of the great improbable underdog stories in sports, and his name is Pat Venditte. And if you're wondering to yourself right now, where do I know that name, Pat Venditte? Where is that coming from? Pat Venditte is the only Major League Baseball pitcher in 140 years of Major League Baseball. Pat is the only guy that is an ambidextrous pitcher, and he pitched in the major leagues with both arms. You remember him now. I know it's coming to you. He was the guy with that specialized glove that when a right-handed hitter would come up, Pat would throw right-handed. When a left-handed hitter would come up, Pat would throw left-handed. And it wasn't like he was born with this gift. This was something that he developed through working with his dad as a kid, and through hard work, through dedication. He just kept getting better and better and better and better to the point where he reached the highest level of baseball, Major League Baseball, and pitched for 6 different Major League Baseball teams over the course of 7 years. And it's just, he just actually retired as a 36-year-old a year ago. And it's just amazing when you look back on the career that Pat Venditte had. And then you also are reminded that he was a walk-on in college. This was not some guy that just dominated high school and was a high-ranked prospect and just had God come down and touch his right or left arm to make sure that he was going to play pro baseball one day. He had to work for every little bit of success that he had. And Pat is the same age as me, essentially. We were always the same age in school. So my last 2 years playing baseball at UNI, we were in the same conference as Creighton, where Pat played. And then we played against each other in summer ball as well. So our careers overlapped quite a bit. And I remember first hearing about Venditte, the guy throws with both hands, and thinking this is going to be a sideshow act. This is going to be a joke. There's no way this guy is any good. And I couldn't believe how good he was. I always say he was essentially like me from the right side. He was like 90 to 92 with a pretty good slider, pretty good breaking ball. But my always problem was I struggled to get lefties out. Once I got higher up, like into the minor leagues, sometimes if you had a lineup with 5 or 6 lefties, I struggled because I didn't have a really good changeup to get some lefties out. Pat could switch his glove to the right hand and then start throwing sliders with his left hand when that would happen against lefties, which would prove to you just how effective he was, because he never had to be in that situation where he was facing a really good left-handed hitter while throwing with the right hand. They just never had something. That was the advantage that Pat Venditte had, and it was remarkable to watch. And frankly, the 10 games I probably played against Pat Venditte, he dominated us. He was really, really a great college player who continued to get better and better even after college, to the point where he made it up to the major leagues and had a decent major league career. And it's one of the greatest underdog stories that the sport of baseball has ever seen. And I'm really happy that we were able to get him on the podcast and bring his story to you guys, the Moonlighters. I think it's perfect for our pod. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this episode. And if you've been following us over the last week, you see I found a recent box of old Moonlight Graham Show shirts that we have not sold. So it's old stock. We're selling them for 50%, $10 a piece. Head over to our website, Moonlight Graham Show. If you guys want a Moonlight Graham Show shirt for 50% off that we were selling last year, we never end up selling all of them. And so we've got some sizes, some colors left. So while we still have them, we'll be trying to get rid of them as much as if you can. So if you want a shirt, send me a DM, send me a text, send me an email, or go to our website, type in the promo code Moonlighter for 50% off, and we'll get you guys a shirt before Christmas time gets here. But enjoy today's episode with Moonlighter Pat Venditte. Moonlighters, are you or someone you know moving down to Kansas City? Well, if you are, the one realtor that we trust and yet you need to be calling is the great Brian Sandvig. As you well know, Brian Sandvig is our producer here on the podcast, and there is not a better residential real estate advisor down in the Kansas City marketplace than Brian Sandvig. Call Brian Sandvig, shoot him a text. Hey, DM us on social media. We'll get you connected with Brian if you can't find him on all the socials, but he is there and he is active, and he is your Kansas City realtor, so give him a call. All right, Pat Venditte, welcome to the Moonlight Graham Show. And of course, the first thing that I got to ask about is one plate appearance in the major leagues. What was that? How did you get a plate appearance in the major leagues?
We were playing interleague against the Diamondbacks, and I think I came in around the 8th inning. It was a tie game. We went into extras, and then I can't remember if it was the 10th or 11th inning, but I was still in the game, and it was a Sunday after we had like a 6 or 9 game stretch, so we didn't have a whole lot of options in the bullpen. So it was either have a DH for me or a pinch hitter for me rather, and then use another bullpen arm, or have me go out, take the at-bat, and see if I could finish the game, because we had, I think, scored a few runs already that inning and taken the lead. So the next thing I knew, I was up to bat, and I got all excited, too, before the series started, because when you go to interleague play, you get to order bats. So I had, customized bat from Louisville Slugger with my name on there, Oakland A's, whatever. I brought them with me, not thinking I was ever going to use them. And sure enough, I left that and my helmet up in the clubhouse. And it was kind of a long walk in Arizona to get from the clubhouse down to the, dugout area. So I was in a scramble, and Marcus Simeon luckily let me use his bat. And he goes, "Don't break it, dude." I was like, "All right, I'll see what I can do." Went up there, and unfortunately, his bat didn't do me any good.
Did you take the bat off your shoulder?
I did. I had a couple foul tips, and then I worked a full count, and then I think the bases were loaded at the time too. So I thought to myself, I'm like, the best chance for us to score a run here and for me to get on base is if this guy walks me, because I don't think I'd seen a pitch since probably Creighton up until that point, which was about 8 years ago at the time. So it was that was my best effort there, and unfortunately, I went down looking.
So that actually surprises me. You got in that bat at Creighton?
Yeah, same type of thing happened, where the DH was out of the game late in the game. I think I had a couple against Illinois State and then one against Missouri. All 3 were strikeouts.
Yeah. Did you guys ever take pitcher's BP at Creighton?
Never. No. And
no.
You know what? Even at the major league level, if you're a bullpen guy, you might bunt leading up to that series, but even day of the game, nothing. They figure the risk of injury outweighs any type of batting practice. Now, when you're in the major leagues in spring training, you'll have cage batting practice, and you'll bunt maybe twice, 2 or 3 times a week. But at that time, I was only in the American League, so I didn't have that luxury.
Yeah, so I want to go back. Our careers overlapped. I'm sure you don't remember me, but I was a pitcher over at UNI when you were at Creighton. And so my last 2 years at UNI, you were at Creighton. So we played in the Northwoods League together, and then we played against each other in the Missouri Valley as well. So the 2 series that we played against each other in school ball were, first of all, 2007, you and I came to Creighton. And that Friday game, I came in in the 2nd inning. So Friday night starter doesn't go past, 1 or 2 innings. I come in early, and then you ended up coming in the 5th inning. So at one point we were pitching against each other there. And then the following summer after that, I think you and I started against each other. You played in Wausau, correct? You and Jeremy, I think, played in Wausau, and I was playing for the Waterloo Bucks. And do I remember that right? Did you start for Wausau?
Maybe so. I wouldn't, not that I can recall, but maybe I did late in the season, because I think we came to you guys later in the year. But I do remember that Friday night game on campus, and then I remember coming to you guys in 2008 too. You guys got the best of us in 2008. I do remember those series. I don't remember exact results, but now that you're jogging that memory, it's coming back.
Yeah, in the '07 series, you got to us early. So obviously I'm coming out of the pen Friday night like I said, it was the second or third inning. So that's not a good sign. And my buddies that went to Creighton always gave me a hard time because all those guys were on like the staff that like raked the base paths between innings, whatever you called those guys. So like a bunch of guys I went to high school with did that. So they were all there. And you know how it goes in college baseball. Your high school buddies might see you play like once or twice the whole year. And for whatever reason, that game, Darren Ruff took me deep in like the fifth or sixth inning, 3-run home run. I think we scored a couple of runs, got back into it a little bit. And then Ruff hits like a 3-run home run off me that showed me the door. And that was the clip that they played on the news that night. And
no.
Still to this day, that's like the only memory my Creighton buddies have of me is giving up that bomb to Darren Ruff. And I always say like Darren Ruff, I don't care about giving up bombs to that guy.
No, that's a good one to give it up to. He's still swinging it, making a pretty good living doing so. So that's not a bad one.
When you played against UNI, what was the scouting report against the Panthers?
I remember Brandon Douglas was the guy we circled around, and that might have been 2000. I don't remember if that was 2007, 2008. But yep, I remember, was it Coach Heller? Was Coach Heller there when you were there?
Yep.
Yeah, I remember him having you guys always ready to play. And Coach Service was always the type of guy that would instill the fear of God into, if you're playing Northern Colorado, he's got these guys as draft picks, All-Americans, getting you antsy on Thursday night. So if anything, we were over preparing for your 8 and 9 hole hitter, like most teams would prepare for the 3 and 4 hole. But it was part of what worked for us.
Yeah, you guys got the best of us in '07. I think it was a sweep. I think we were like playing actually pretty well at that point, and then we came into your place, you swept us. '08, we had a good team in '08. Brandon Douglas won the Conference Player of the Year that year in 2008. Yep. And you guys came to our place. And the first thing that I remember is, we were really excited for this series because we wanted payback on you guys. And so Friday, you guys show up to the field and we're taking batting practice. And you know how it goes with pitchers. During batting practice, we're the bullpen guys. I'm trying to cover as much ground as I can in left center. And, we're making bets over who can get the most balls. We're kind of jacking around, having fun, pretty loose before a Friday night game. Then you guys show up to the field, and you mentioned it with Coach Service. He had you over-prepared. And I'll never forget the way you guys all came onto the field. It was almost like the Marines or the Navy SEALs were coming onto the field, and everybody had a spot to go, sprinted onto the field, and we're jacking around during batting practice. And I was thinking, holy cow, these guys are ready to go.
You know what? It is, as you go on as I was playing pro ball, all these guys from, all these schools would always say that same exact thing. And, you're exactly right. He put so much emphasis on preparation and setting the tone early for exactly what you said, to send the message to the other team. We're not here to jack around. We outwork most of the teams we're going to play against. We're not going to win all the games, but it's not going to be because of a lack of effort. And that was something I really held on to as I moved along, and was always grateful that, I got to play 4 years under him.
That 2008 weekend, just to jog your memory, I think on the Saturday or maybe it was the Sunday game, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a moment where I believe you're on the mound and Joe Service was behind the plate. And
I remember exactly what you're about to talk about.
There was a pop fly right in front of our dugout at UNI, so on the third base side. And this series was pretty intense. And at this point, I had already pitched for the weekend. So I was out for the day. I was done. And the ball comes, fly ball, third base side, and you guys like stare at each other, and the ball drops right between you, and it's right in front of our dugout. And I was screaming, Pat, as loud as anybody can ever scream at another player and not be, have the coach say anything, right? Like 6 inches from your face. And you and Joe Service were kind of getting after one another about dropping that ball. What happened on that moment?
So what happened, the way I remember it was, there had been he did not drop a ball that series, but our catcher the night before had dropped a pop-up behind home plate. And I thought to myself, all right, I'm coming at this ball from this angle. He's got to track it from behind. I took charge and tried to call him off. And what happened was he was camped under it, and I ran into him, and I caused him to drop the ball. So completely my fault. I was in the wrong. That's not my ball at all. And as we were walking back to the mound, having words with one another, he was like lowering his shoulder into me and, yelling at me. And I'm like, you know what? You're not wrong. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to go back to the mound and try to get this guy out. I don't remember the result of the at-bat, but I 100% remember what you're talking about. Joe and I still talk about that to this day.
Yeah, that was one of those moments where we've all kind of unraveled on the mound, and every now and again you get into it with your catcher. But to have it happen right in front of the opposing dugout on a conference weekend, that was something special for us.
That's not ideal. And just to let you know how into the moment I was, I did not hear a word from your dugout, because had I heard something, I probably would have turned around and said something back, especially in that frustrating of a moment.
I've talked about this a lot on the podcast about pitchers catching pop flies. Where do you stand on pitchers catching pop flies?
I'm all for if the pitcher can make the play, make the play. I think some of these pop-ups are so difficult on catchers for no reason, because they get turned around, the backspin of the ball coming back. It's not an easy ball to catch. Whereas if you're the pitcher coming in to catch it, it's like you're in center field and it's a can of corn. It's not a hard play, but somewhere along the line, it was said that pitchers can't make plays, and that's, stay on the mound, don't move. And I've never subscribed to that. And if you watch the guys in the big leagues, if they have the chance to get the out, they're going to take it.
Yeah, great. I knew we'd get along on that, Pat. Knowing the competitor that you are, I knew we'd see eye to eye on that one.
Yeah, they make this a lot more difficult than it is. It's a simple pop-up.
So going back, I want to go back to the very beginning with you, because you're the only guy in Major League Baseball history to ever pitch with both hands. And it's one of the most remarkable athletic feats that I can remember. I'm currently reading the Bo Jackson book about him playing multiple sports in the 80s and 90s. And him and Deion Sanders are in a class of their own when it comes to that. We'll probably never see anything quite like that again. But I don't think we will see another Pat Venditte, but we've never seen that in 130 years, 140 years of Major League Baseball. It's been written about quite a bit that your old man was a ball player himself. He wanted to originally get you on this program to give you, more of a competitive edge. How did it initially start? Was it your dad's idea, your idea? Where did it start?
It was 100% my dad's idea. I think I was only 3 or 4 when he had me start. And he just, he had a love of the game. And he wanted to pass that on to me and wanted to give me every competitive advantage I could have. And maybe seeing his, 5'7" frame, maybe wasn't, I don't think he maybe knew I was going to turn out to be 6 foot or 6'1". Granted, that's not huge, but, it's enough not to get passed up when draft time comes. And he wanted to give me every advantage I could have. So I think that's kind of how that started. And it took a long time. It wasn't until my sophomore year at Creighton until I was actually having success with it. But it's, one of the things I'll be forever grateful for. And it was not just him teaching me to throw left-handed, but taking all the time, the mornings before high school, coming down when I didn't make the travel roster at Creighton, spending all the time with me that he did, getting all the work in to allow me to live out that dream.
Did you ever push back as a kid? Because, it's one thing for your dad to suggest it. It's another thing for you as a kid to take over a decade to develop teaching your body to throw with both hands. And at some point, most kids would say Dad, you're wacko, you're crazy, I'm going to rebel, and I'm just going to do it the way everybody else does it.
I don't think I ever full on rebelled. I'm sure I was difficult at times, like any father-son relationship. Obviously everybody knows the right answer except your old man. That's kind of how it is until you turn about 17 or 18 and figure out that, all right, this guy's got it figured out. But I don't ever remember like a moment to where I was like going to stop doing it, but I definitely remember frustration along the way because the left side just, it was not easy. It's not my natural side, and it took me a long time to develop.
So obviously you go through like a throwing program with both hands, and I've seen it out there that you punted footballs with both feet to teach your body, how to move in a lot of different ways. When did the left side start to come around and start to be like, I'm actually throwing like a normal person from the left side?
You know what? I was always, I always was a normal throwing. You wouldn't see me throwing left-handed and be like, oh, this kid doesn't know how to throw. It was more or less the velocity that just never really came around. I was at Creighton my sophomore year throwing maybe 78 or 80 over the top. And then my pitching coach, Travis Wyckoff, dropped me down sidearm left-handed. So I was over the top righty, probably 85 at the time. And then sidearm, I didn't lose much velo. I was still like 79 to 83, but I was able to spin a slider. And that was really when that success started to happen, is when I lowered the arm slot, everything became natural. I started to get a much better feel for the baseball, and that's when it took off.
Yeah, that's what I remember too. Is I remember you as a slider guy from the left side. Like, and here's what I remember from Creighton, because I remember that in 2007, like I said, I pitched on Friday, and then you went and pitched Saturday and Sunday. You pitched every day of the weekend because we had two lefties in the middle of the order that you would come in and you would just slider them to death. And you had a good slider, but it was like low 80s on top of that. So the fastball wasn't much, but the slider was really good. And then from the right side, at least back in your Creighton days, I remember you being like 90 to 92 with a pretty good slider there. And it was just much different from the left side. And is that kind of what you were? Do I remember that right? I remember charting your pitches.
Yeah. Maybe a little, you know what? Maybe I did throw a little harder then, but by the time I got to pro ball, I think I only hit 91 a handful of times. It was much more finesse, but yeah, maybe back then that sounds about right. Maybe a little gracious with the 92s. I don't know how many of those I hit.
I remember you hitting 92. You came in for Ben Mancuso on like the Saturday or Sunday game, and you were pumping like 92, and I was like, God dang it. Venditte he's good. I didn't want to admit it at the time because I thought you were going to be like a sideshow. And then I was like, look at this guy. He's got a good slider from the left side, and he's hitting 92 from the right side. This guy's legit. I'm
going to have to make sure these guys that give me grief for not throwing hard. Here's some of this. I don't think anybody knows I had 92 in the cannon.
How hard was it for you? And you said it yourself that service wouldn't let you pitch from the left side as a freshman. How hard was it for you to get over the hump of like, this is just a sideshow act thing. This is a novelty act. I'm a legit prospect. I'm a legit pitcher.
You know what? I honestly never thought of myself as that, and I could see how other people would. But I was, I grew up going to Creighton games. I went to high school a block away from campus there at Omaha Central. And I was just, I didn't think as a freshman or sophomore pro ball was in the realm. I was just trying to find a way to make a travel roster. And I was so heavily focused on finding a way to get into games and helping the team win. I had kind of a tunnel vision. I didn't think of a whole lot else. And then fast forward a couple of years, my junior year, I was doing okay, but there was like a long scoreless streak that kind of put me on the map where I went somehow a couple months without giving up a run. And that was kind of that aha moment where I'm like, okay, well, maybe I can take this to the next level. And then getting drafted that year, granted it was in the 45th round, that then became my full focus. It went from beyond just helping Creighton to, finding a way to achieve that next goal.
Did you ever deal with any arm injuries? Because, so often in pitching, like the biggest thing that holds people back from developing, gaining velocity, taking the next step is they get hurt, whether it's tendonitis or whether it's something more serious. When you're put on the shelf for 6 months, 12 months, a year, even 1 or 2 months during a season, it can really hinder your development. And for, somebody like you who was a walk-on and needed to really, really develop during your short time that you had at Creighton, those 4 years, did you ever have to deal with, one of your arms or part of your body putting you on the shelf?
As crazy as it is, I don't think I ever missed a game at Creighton for those 4 years. And then my next 5 years after that, I didn't as well. I was able to stay healthy through those first 5 seasons of pro ball. And then when I was 27, I blew out at the end of spring training, my right shoulder. So I missed all of 2012 and most of 2013 rehabbing a right labrum surgery that I had. And that was tough, especially coming back as a 28-year-old who had never pitched a game above AA. Or I guess I'd been at AAA for just a few games before I got hurt. But it made things very difficult. And yeah, when you miss that much time, it takes, almost a full year just to get back into the swing of things.
After you leave Creighton and you get drafted by the Yankees, you said in the 45th round as a junior, and then as a 20th round pick as a senior there at Creighton. What did you learn as you went up the minor leagues from, single A, double A, triple A? What did you learn that you had to refine within your pitch craft, both on the right side and left side, that things that might have worked in college that no longer worked once you hit double A or triple A?
It's like this every time you go up a level. Your 3 and 4 hitters from the level before, they're a nobody once you get to that next level. Maybe one of those 2 of those guys will stick around. And each level you go up, obviously, the bottom of the order, those guys are no longer there. So those easy outs you were getting 2 levels before, they don't exist. It's those best hitters you were facing, in low A, high A, double A, and it gets exponentially harder. And the biggest difference is the plate discipline. These guys don't chase, so they're not giving you strikeouts after you give up a walk and a base hit. They're not getting you out of your jams. You're having to do that yourself, and that's by far and away the biggest difference between even AAA and the big leagues, is just that overall plate discipline and the emphasis that these guys give into each at-bat. There's not a single at-bat that's given up in the major leagues because there's dollars behind every plate appearance. If the guy hits a bomb, it means more money the next year. You're not able to get through like you did the level before, and as you go up, it just gets harder and harder.
The famous scene that, many baseball fans, when they hear your name, they think of the moment in the minor leagues where there was the switch hitter, and then you're obviously the switch pitcher, and you guys are going back and forth between the right hand and the left hand and the right batter's box and the left batter's box. And then, of course, the Pat Venditte rule gets implemented in both the minors and the majors after that. Did you know that moment was coming before it happened?
I had an idea there was going to be a little maybe delay or something because we didn't know what the rule was going to be. So before the game had started, I would always know at Creighton, which way I was going to face these guys because there was a rule in place, and I knew I had to tell the hitter which way I was going to pitch. There was no such rule. So I was told by one of our coordinators that was there that day, hey, just keep switching until they make you stop. We'll see what they say. So I was not aware that it was going to blow up the way it did, and the only reason it did blow up like that, the Mets game got rained out that night, and we were playing on Coney Island against the Mets rookie affiliate. So they have their cameras set up there at the ballpark, and they're able to broadcast those games in case, the Mets are rained out on SNY. And sure enough, they got rained out last night, and that's the only reason the world got to see that. Otherwise, it would have been just like any other minor league game that nobody sees.
I mean, it's just remarkable. Like, when you would switch hands on the mound, and you had, of course, the custom glove that was so cool, but it was amazing to watch you go back and forth, almost like Jim Abbott, the way Jim Abbott would handle his glove. Obviously, you didn't have a disability. You had this kind of special skill. But was there, when you would switch hands from left to right or from right to left, were there like mental checks that you would go through in your head and eventually they just become natural to remind yourselves of like, hey, these are my mechanics from this side. Here are the checkpoints that I got to hit, mentally, because you got 2 different motions, 2 different, windups and 2 different arm slots. And I got to imagine that was hard to balance when you're going back and forth throughout a lineup.
It's the hardest part about that is getting that first pitch in the zone after going 4 minutes without throwing a ball from that side. So, if you face 3 righties in a row, you could have a guy on second and third with 1 out with a 3-hole hitter coming up, and you have to locate a slider first pitch when it's been almost a half inning since you threw that last pitch. So it wasn't until I was probably over 30 years old when I realized the importance of that and just how bad I was getting, burned on that. So the last few years of my career, I put a heavy emphasis on locating that first pitch and training myself in the off season to go several minutes without throwing a ball from that side. And as far as mental checkpoints, I had the same 3 checkpoints from each side. It was balance, direction, and finish. And that kept it as simple as possible for when those moments kind of speed up on you. If you're missing on one side, it was the same adjustments. It was just depending on which one of those 3 adjustments it needed to be.
So you make your major league debut with the Oakland Athletics after, 6 years in the minors?
Over 7. I played out that whole first contract with the Yankees, and then midway through my free agent year there with the A's.
When you get the call, what's that like?
It was a very special moment. I had become close with those guys in Nashville, and these guys had obviously, once you're in the minor leagues for 7 years, you cross paths with a lot of guys, and the younger guys understand kind of what you've gone through to get to that point. And with each year that passes, after that, 4th or 5th year, the likelihood of a call-up becomes less and less. There's so many guys that you see play for 10 years in the minor leagues and never get that opportunity. So when I came out of the manager's office, the 24 other guys were waiting there for me and kind of mobbed me. And, it was kind of a special moment. Ryan Cook was there, who was at the time coming back up with the A's. He had, poured some cocktails for the guys to celebrate. And, that was it. Went up to pack my apartment and I was gone.
What was your first day in the major leagues like?
It was mayhem. I had found out the night before that I was going up, and that was about 11:30 in Nashville. And I had a flight out at like 7 a.m. to Boston. And my wife and we were flying up together. She helped me pack up the apartment the best we could. I wasn't sure if I was going to stay forever. So we took a bag, and with fully knowing I could be back the next day. You don't know. So we packed up, and there was a lot of flight delays that afternoon. There was some weather going up the east, and we kept getting delayed. And I was thinking, oh no, they're not gonna call me up now. They're gonna need to find somebody else. And I had all these thoughts, and then about 4 o'clock, I talked to Mickey, our travel secretary, and he said, Pat, you've already been added to the roster. They're not calling anybody else. Just get here. We'll have a car waiting for you. And that actually didn't end up happening. I had to take a taxi. It got to be so late. It was like 7 o'clock when I arrived. And I walked into Fenway Park after the game had started, and they don't have a separate players entrance there once the game starts. So I had to go convince one of the security guys as I was getting out of a taxi, my A's bag, that I was a player. So he had to call around, and finally somebody came and escorted me through. And you go through the concourse there at Fenway where, the concession stands are. And you're backing up into a concession line into the visitors clubhouse. So I went in there. Tyler Clifford was taking a nap, so I had to be quiet. You sign a new contract when you get there. And I think by the time I got out there, it was the 3rd inning. And I'll never forget it. I went and shook Bob Melvin's hand, told him how excited I was. And then Stephen Vogt pulled me aside. He goes, all right, when you go out there this next half inning, he's like, I want you to walk it as slow as you can from here to third base, and then give me the best show jog I've ever seen and take in every second of this. And, sure enough, I did that. Had he not said that, I probably wouldn't have. I would have just rushed out to the bullpen. And it was one of those moments where, him being the veteran classy guy that he is, realized that I was probably going to be speeding everything up that night, and kind of started it off by slowing it down for me.
That's an amazing story. I love that. And I love that baseball has these vets that are always looking out for the young guys. even the guy like Stephen Vogt, right, who's had a great long career, that he still understands that for certain guys, like, hey, man, you've got to relish every day of this because you never know when it's going to be taken away. And so just savor every second of this moment.
Yeah, and I was fortunate to have quite a few of those guys. Him and Jesse Chavez are still going at it. Are just two of the best guys ever, and they had understood what I had went through to get to that level. Steven had same kind, maybe not as long, but he was overlooked for a very, very long time. And even after those years with the A's, he was overlooked and found a way to extend his career another 7 years after that. So I tried to pass that down every chance I got. Those guys really, really got to me in a positive way. And as the years went on, I was always sure to, make sure those younger guys were taken care of and treating them in a certain way, because not all guys treat you that way.
What's cool about your career too is you played, like, you got to wear some cool hats. You play for the A's, you play for the Giants, you play for the Dodgers, you play for the Marlins, you play for the Blue Jays. Like, you never want to bounce around. Everybody would love to have a 10-year career with the Yankees, right? But look, like, it wasn't like you just got a cup of coffee with the team that drafted you. You had to earn your way onto like 5 different major league teams. And that's pretty remarkable considering you had to walk on at Creighton.
Yeah, there's for sure no regrets in any of this. And it was so difficult to get there for the first time. And as difficult as it was to get there, it's even harder to stay, just because you are going up against the best 700 players in the world every single night. And unfortunately, I didn't have the best of skill set when it came to a scouting report, or how I was viewed as from a scouting perspective. So I knew that my time in the big leagues was going to be predicated strictly on results. And with the stuff I possessed, some days it was going my way, and a lot of the time it was a battle just to find a way to get 3 outs. But I'll forever be grateful for the 6 teams that let me put on that uniform over the years.
What was your best day in the major leagues?
Oh, I would say probably my debut obviously will forever reign. But my time with the Dodgers, my first night with them in 2018 was pretty special. A couple innings against the Reds. And then that led to 7 different call-ups that year, and then being there when we won the NL West against Colorado in game 163. That was probably the most special day, being there on Dodger Stadium, celebrating with Clayton Kershaw and Justin Turner and those guys. It was a special time.
You sat in probably more bullpens than anyone I've ever had on this podcast before. Maybe Tony Watson. Tony Watson might be the only one that has you beat. But I guess you probably played with Tony Watson, didn't you?
I did, and unfortunately, I have him beat too, because he's been rotating those same 30 in the big leagues for a long time. I've seen far too many after that. Low A, high A, winter ball, Europe.
Europe? Did you play in Europe with the World Baseball Classic?
Yeah, so I'm an Italian citizen, so I played in 2 World Baseball Classics and 2 or 3 European championships, as well as winter ball in Mexico, Venezuela, and the Dominican over the years.
Did you become an Italian citizen to play in the World Baseball Classic?
Yeah, I sure did.
That's cool. So how far, was your grandpa from Italy, or how far does it go?
My great-grandparents were born there, and the biggest thing was my great-grandfather never fully renounced his Italian citizenship, which made my path to citizenship a lot easier. Just had to track down some documents. Team Italy had helped me quite a bit with that as well from a legal perspective, and I think it took about 6 months or so, and got the citizenship in 2012.
What's the worst stadium you've played in post-college? So, you played in a lot of bad summer ball stadiums. You play in a lot of, rinky-dink places in college every now and again. But once you get out of college, you kind of expect for everything to be nice in pro ball. What's the worst place you played?
You know what? There's some rookie ball fields up there in the Northeast in the New York Penn League that remind you of Waterfront Park there in Waterloo. And Waterfront Park is probably a little nicer than some of those. So the lower levels of the minor leagues, you would be shocked at, you came from college and your college facilities were far nicer than a lot of those. And as far as at the major league level, while it'll always have a special place in my heart, the Coliseum is it's a little bit of a grungy place at times.
I mean, I got to imagine Riverfront is still worse than the Coliseum.
Yeah. I mean, it not by much though, not by much. But the fans out there in Oakland make that place special though. They come out every night, no matter how the team's doing, and they make it fun for those guys that are there, because the majority of the time, those guys making their debut with the A's are guys similar to me who have maybe been journeymen that a lot of the other teams have passed on, and because of the financial situation there in Oakland, they give guys like me a chance. So I'll be forever grateful for them as well.
Who was the guy that you learned the most from in the bullpen?
Hands down, Jesse Chavez. After even 2 years after I was gone, he would call me after outings, send me a text, hey, you're doing this, you're tipping this pitch. And I was struggling to find my right-handed slider. And we were together, I think it was in 2016 with Toronto. And he had said, you know what? Why don't you try throwing your slider off of your index? Because my left middle finger is double jointed, so I was always able to spin that slider super easy. It was just never difficult. The right side was a battle. So I started straddling that seam in between my index and middle finger and ripping off of that middle seam to try to create more spin. And that bought me another 5 years after that, thanks to Jesse.
When you were pitching, how prevalent was the data revolution that we're seeing right now? Because a lot of that stuff now, it's like you can go in after a bullpen and just see your spin rate on your slider, your curve, your fastball, and you can kind of make adjustments pitch to pitch throughout a bullpen. I think our era, because we're the same age, everything was based on feel and there wasn't as much data, and you might go weeks at a time before making an adjustment on something, and you would need a guy like Jesse Chavez to notice it. How towards later in your career were you using some of that data stuff?
Not a whole lot. As far as like the metrics and whatnot and spin rate, I knew that my slider spun a lot and I knew that it moved a lot. Other than that, I didn't care a whole lot. To me, the hitter will let you know how your pitches are doing. You can tell after an outing if you were fooling the guys or not. I wasn't the type that wanted to dive too much into that, because in the moment, you just want to compete. The last thing I wanted to think about is how am I going to get an extra few RPMs, on the slider. It's more or less, where are you going to start this pitch? How are you going to finish it to get the result you want? So I didn't get into that a whole lot. I know guys that did, but baseball is a hard enough game as it is. As you introduce more things in the heat of the moment, it just becomes more difficult.
Mm-hmm. Who was the guy that when you saw him get in the box, you just thought, man, I got no chance?
Surprisingly enough, the guy I struggled with the most in the big leagues was Rougned Odor.
Oh, really?
Oh, my gosh. There's certain guys you face that can handle depth, and then certain guys that can't handle the side-to-side. So there was some of those guys like Rougned who side-to-side did not fool him at all. And that was pretty much my whole game. It was either sinkers in or sliders away. So it took really a few years for me to get the understanding of between him and Paul Goldschmidt. I needed something going, from up to down if I was going to get them out. So I started introducing a changeup. It worked on Goldschmidt. It might have worked a time or two on Odor, but he was squaring me up even when I was getting him out.
Was there a guy, and maybe it's Paul Goldschmidt, that, is this big name guy, right? Like an MVP all-star type of guy that you just had his number for whatever reason?
Prince Fielder was that guy for me. I think I faced him 3 or 4 times my rookie season, and I struck him out. And I don't think I threw a single fastball. I didn't have to deviate at all from my slider for some reason. He just did not see it. And even when I would hang him, he would just swing right through him. So that was the one guy that I had his number.
That's the one you'll tell your kids about too. I mean, Prince Fielder is one of those guys that nobody ever forgets. Unfortunately, when I tell my kids 10 years from now that like I couldn't get Andy Dirks out, they're not going to know who Andy Dirks is.
I tell you what, in 2012, I was playing down in the Dominican. I went down there for the finals, and Andy Dirks in Game 9, if you can believe that, Game 9 of the Dominican World Series, hit a base hit up the middle to win the game for us, and it was just mayhem that ensued. Like 15,000 fans rushed the stadium, rushed our locker room. And I'd gotten paid in cash before the game, so I didn't even celebrate with the guys. I went directly over to my bag and was hiding my money.
Oh, I love
and just standing by to make sure nobody took my bag. But yeah, the legend of Andy Dirks lives strong in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic.
I tell you what, man, if you were in the Missouri Valley Conference in 2007, 2008, Andy Dirks was a problem.
He was. He pitched. He played well in the big leagues too with the Tigers.
Oh yeah, no, he had a good little run. It just felt like injuries always kept him from being, like a 10-year major leaguer.
Yep.
But those last, our era there in the MVC, those were like Gene Stevenson's last great teams.
Yeah, I think things have changed for sure since then. And, Missouri State was a problem back then as well. Southern Illinois was always tough. You guys would give us issues. It was a good conference. And unfortunately, since Creighton has moved, I haven't followed them as much. I live here now in Peoria, Illinois, so I'll run across Elvis Dominguez and, go to some of their games throughout the year. But it does seem a little bit different than it was there in the early 2000s.
Yeah, definitely. Wichita and Creighton not being in the league anymore. And they have gotten Dallas Baptist, which Dallas Baptist is a wagon. They're really, really good. But it's a different league, right? You add Belmont, you add Dallas Baptist, but some of those longtime rivalries and just being able to bust to all the games, those things are gone.
Yeah, no, there was definitely some fun memories there and some great battles that don't exist anymore.
So, what are you doing now?
So I've stopped playing in 2021, so about a little over a year and a half ago. I got a job with a technology company here in Peoria, Illinois, and I've been doing that for the last 18 months and volunteering as the pitching coach at Peoria Notre Dame High School when I can get there, and spending as much time as possible with my 5, 4, and 1-year-old.
Wow, congrats, man. Is it hard? Like you played baseball and you played it at the highest of levels for a really long time. You're 35, 36 years old before you actually hang it up. Like, which part of you goes to bed at night and dreams of like, well, I don't know, I guess if the Yankees called and I got 3 months to get ready for spring training, I guess I could do it.
You know what? That part doesn't cross my mind because I remember just how hard it is to prepare to go into those battles and to get ready for a 9-month season. And I would know that, even if that opportunity came, it would take all of me for probably 8 months just to get back. So I don't really think about that side of it. I do watch, every night I watch Darren as much as I can, all the other friends that I've had along the way that are still playing. And I'm still very much in love with the game. I'm in love with watching, little things throughout the game and being able to predict what's going to happen next because, the way the guy's feeling on the mound, you maybe understand that batter's not seeing anything that day. And you can kind of you can almost sense how a game is going to go. And I'm still tied into it, and it'll forever be a big part of my life.
So maybe final question here, Pat, is, you played with so many guys and at some point you just stop getting starstruck because, you've been a major leaguer and you've, been on an NL West team with Clayton Kershaw. But was there ever a guy that you met in the major leagues, or maybe it was Bob Gibson in college, that just left you completely starstruck and kind of having to pinch yourself to realize like, man, I was a walk-on that They wouldn't even let me pitch with my left hand my freshman year. And then here I am now in this situation with this legendary guy.
It wasn't probably until I was in that Dodger clubhouse on a consistent basis. And when I was with Toronto in 16, they had some superstars like Bautista, Donaldson. They were all R.A. Dickey, Russell Martin. But when I walked into that Dodgers clubhouse, you could just sense things were different. And maybe not starstruck, but I just have so much respect for the way Kershaw, Turner, they go about their business every day, Walker Buehler. And not only that, but how them and Dave Roberts and Mark Pryor make it a priority to get that culture to a place to where you're landing on a road trip, and every one of those veterans is going to every guy on the roster and asking who wants to go out to dinner. They just created such a sense of belonging, even though I had such a small role on that team. That was the thing that has really stood out to me and has made a lasting impression.
That's cool. And final question, Pat, what's the advice that you give the kids at Peoria, Notre Dame, or any kid that would come up to you looking for advice on what to do with their baseball career? What's the one piece that you like to give out?
Just compete. If you love it and you put in the work, it'll work out. Are you going to get to the big leagues? Maybe. I mean, you don't know. You have to see it through. Don't let anybody tell you that it can't be done. See it through until they rip the jersey off of you. And, those guys, the kids that want to do that, there's always a place for them to play up until through college baseball. You know how it is. If you care enough about the game and you want to play in college, there's going to be a place for you. And then you get there and you never know what's going to happen because you have the most developing years of your life from, 18 to 22 to focus really on nothing but baseball, a little bit of school and a lot of baseball. So it's one of those things where if the guys want to do it, I tell them to just keep going until somebody rips it away from them.
Pat Venditte, I'm really glad that we were able to do this, man. Thank you for coming on the Moonlight Graham Show. It was a pleasure competing against you 15 years ago. And when I started this podcast 6 years ago, I thought, man, it'd be really cool to get Venditte on the pod. I think you're the ultimate underdog story, and it's just a real pleasure to talk to you tonight. So thank you.
I appreciate you having me. It was a lot of fun going down memory lane here.
That's right. All right. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you for listening to today's episode with the great Pat Venditte. And as I was just thinking about playing against Pat and watching him warm up for games, it was a remarkable thing to watch because, he would do a full warm up where he would play long toss all the way out with his right hand and then come all the way back in and play long toss all the way out with his left hand. And I remember just thinking as a competitor, thinking, man, I just spent 30 minutes playing catch and getting warmed up on a Friday night or a Saturday for this game. Pat took 45 minutes to an hour to get ready, and just the dedication to essentially do double the work every day. It takes a special guy to be able to do that. So not only, did Pat have a lot of talent, but he also had a lot of dedication, and I honestly don't think we'll ever see anybody else do it. I know there's a lot of kids out there that are probably trying to be the next Pat Venditte, but I really do think Venditte was unique in that it took the right guy to be able to do it. Maybe we'll see it again someday. I don't know. I would love to have that guy on the podcast when we do find the next Pat Venditte. So looking at his stats, we didn't go over in detail his stats in the intro, but we will go over it here. Pat Venditte, he played for Oakland, Toronto, Seattle, the Dodgers, San Francisco, and Miami. So he had a career ERA of 4.73, 2-2 record, appeared in 61 major league games, never started a game, did finish 22 games, 72 career innings pitched, gave up 62 hits in 72 innings. That's actually pretty good. Pat's last stint in the major leagues was in 2020 with the Miami Marlins, and Pat had a 0 ERA. His last year in the major leagues, 2020 with the Marlins, he appeared in 3 games, finished 2 of them, pitched 4.1 innings, gave up 1 hit, and did not give up a run for the entire year. So if that's the way that you go out,
That's a pretty darn good way to go out. So congrats to Pat Venditte on a remarkable baseball career. Special thanks to the Moonlight Graham Show team, Brian Sandvig, who's got a baby on the way, Brendan Gargano, who does all of our artwork, Tommy Griffin, who I know has had kind of a sick household lately. So Tom, I hope everybody's feeling good. And then my brothers, Neil and Andy. And thank to you guys, the Moonlighters out there, for listening. Have a great week, Moonlighters.
It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. It's a pretty good program, broadcasting to the heartland. Sports stories for the everyman. It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. Please follow us on Instagram. You're loving us on Twitter too. You download every pod we do. It's Moonlight Graham.